Hello everybody, welcome back to the Tech Wizard channel. This is Nate here today, and today we've got a pretty awesome $700 PC build for you guys, and I'm really excited. So yeah, this PC should be able to run almost any game you throw at it, like literally pretty much any game, and you can even try out some 4K with a couple games. Probably if you have a 4K monitor, you could run most of your games at 4K. It's got an 8-core processor in it, which is going to be really good for editing and any other kind of like high CPU tasks. So that being said, let's get started. But if you close your eyes. For the processor, I got the AMD FX 8350, which is a 4 GHz processor, and like I said, it has 8 cores, and that comes in at $120. There's not going to be really any problems with this processor other than the fact that it's pretty old. I think it came out around 2011 or 2012, so like I said, it's pretty old. And the only problem you could have with it being old is the fact if you get a new motherboard, the BIOS might need a different driver because the drivers are different now, and so but that wouldn't be too hard to do. You could just download it and then put it onto your hard drive and get that set up. I'm not really going to explain that right now, but basically you just have to get a different driver for your BIOS, but the motherboard I've picked out here should work just fine with this processor. To cool that, I went with a water cooler this time, which is not what I usually do. I usually just use the stock cooler or a cheaper cooler, but this time I decided, you know, we got 8 cores, I think we're going to need a water cooler. So I got the Corsair H6054 CFM, which is a liquid CPU cooler, obviously, and it's only going to be cooling the CPU. I'm not going to be cooling the graphics card because I really just don't need that. For the motherboard, I got the MSI 970 Gaming ATX. It's an AM3 motherboard, obviously, and yeah, it's a gaming motherboard, so it's a little bit more expensive at $84, but it still works out, and it's MSI, which is I use MSI for my motherboards almost every time because I really like MSI and ASRock. I went with a little bit of a cheaper RAM this time. I got the G-Skill Value series. It's not the most famous G-Skill brand, but it's the cheaper series. It's a DDR3, and I got one stick of 8 GB. And the reason I went with a cheaper RAM was so that I could fit in a 6 GB graphics card instead of a 3 GB graphics card, and in my opinion, that's worth it. Now, if you were wanting to run your games at 4K because you have a 4K monitor or something like that, I would recommend you get either you get 2 8 GB sticks or 16 GB of RAM, because there are certain games which you will need that in, and the problem is you can't really determine, this will give you the perfect results in every game ever, because there's a lot of games that use a ton of CPU power and not much RAM at all, but there's a lot of games that use a ton of RAM and not much CPU at all. So the problem with that is you can't really buy more of one and not the other and expect it to just work out in every game. A good example of this would be if you're wanting to run the game Battlefield 1 in 4K, you would probably need more RAM, because I know at 4K, Battlefield 1 runs from around 10 GB of RAM to 11 or 12 GB of RAM. So it uses a lot more RAM than 8 GB, which is something you will need if you're trying to run in 4K. Now, if you're wanting to run in 1080p for Battlefield 1, then 8 GB will be just fine. Moving on to the actual storage, we have the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB hard drive, and this is just the classic hard drive that you use on almost every build, and I had to go with this one, which is $48 rather than an SSD. If you have a little bit of extra money, I would highly recommend getting an SSD to improve your load times, but it probably will cost you about twice as much for a fourth of the storage space. Now for the most exciting part, the graphics card. I chose the EVGA GeForce GTX 1060, which is a 6 GB card, and I really like this one. I don't necessarily like the way this one looks because the cooler is a lot smaller, but the case doesn't have a window on it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. This will perform very, very well, especially because it's a 6 GB card. It will be able to run, like I said, pretty much any game at 60 frames per second, which is very, very nice and always really smooth. To power all this, another EVGA product, the 500 watt bronze certified ATX power supply. This was $36, and it's the power supply I use in almost all of my builds. I actually use this one in my build on my desk that's right now, and it's just a really good power supply, and I really love how low the price is for the 500 watts. To house all this, I went with a cheaper case, the Corsair 200R ATX mid-tower case. That was $55. Usually I spend $70 to $100 on the case, but on this one I decided I would rather get a better build with water cooling and stuff than get a nicer looking case. You could always spend more money on the case, or later in the future if you get more money, come back and get a better case and upgrade your parts. I'm going to wrap it up with that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I would love to help you out. And if you want an actual tutorial on like how to build a PC, I could probably do that if you really wanted me to. And yeah, I can definitely help you guys with anything you need if you're trying to put something together, or like I said, if you want to get the extra driver to use a different motherboard than the one we have here. That being said, please go follow me on Instagram at the.tech.wizard. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you're really interested, go check out my other videos and maybe even subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video.